Welcome back to Lesson 1 of Unity, part number 6. Now we're going to add another dynamic element to our island. With our volcano built, we want to make it look a bit more realistic, so we're going to create a particle system. Go to Game Object, Create Other, and Particle System. This creates a particle system in our scene, so you'll see it straight away in the hierarchy. So as you can see, a particle system is made up of a simple game object, an ellipsoid particle emitter, a particle animator, and a particle renderer. Now, as we're trying to get this particle system to be the smoke plume coming from the volcano, what we're going to need to do is position this particle system inside the volcano mouth. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that it's a decent height up from the ground level. So I'm going to put 50 into the y-axis, because as you should remember from part 2, the actual ground level of our terrain was around about 30 meters. Now that I've got my height correct, what I can then do is drag my red handles and blue handles with the translate tool in order to position this in the exact right place that I want it, because I know the height isn't going to change once I've set it to 50, and as you can see, it ends up inside my volcano mouth, which I know starts at 30 and goes up to about 70. Next, we're going to fill in the settings for the particle system, and I'll explain what they do as we go along. So first I want you to set the minimum size to 15 and the maximum size to 20. The size defines how big each particle is. Next I'm going to set my minimum energy to 5 and the maximum energy to 7. That's how long the particles are going to stay in the game. So as one gets created, it will last between 5 and 7 seconds. Then I'm going to fill in a minimum emission of 20 and a maximum emission of 30. And in order to get these particles moving upwards, I'm going to set the y value of world velocity to 30. As you can see, my plume now moves upwards. The next step is going to be to make our plume act more erratically, so in a more natural way. To do this, we're going to add some random velocity. In the x value, I'm going to put in 5. In the y, I'm going to place in just 1 because it's already moving upwards, and in the Z, 5 also. And as you can see now, the particles are getting buffeted around as if they were being blown at random by the wind. Next, we're going to increase the amount of size of the ellipsoid. Now, the ellipsoid is the amount of space in the 3D world that our particle system can take place in. So I'm going to put in a value of 10 for the X, 50 for the Y, and 10 for the Z. So you can now see that those particles are moving outward more freely because they have more space technically to move around in. We then move on to the next component of our particle system, which is the particle animator. The particle animator allows you to specify settings for each and every particle, from the moment they get created to the moment they get destroyed. So for example, the first thing we're going to set up is the animation of color. So if you click on the color block and then drag the color slider down until we have quite a dark grey. Now this first color block, this first point of color animation, defaults to an opacity of 4. We're going to drag that right up to a value of 100 because we want our smoke to start off a really dark grey. And if you look in the mouth of the volcano, you should see a few particles starting off at that color. Then I'm going to move to the next color animation block, which is the value for color animation brackets 1. I'm going to set that to a nice dark red, and I'm leaving my opacity at around about 70%. Then color animation 2, I'm going to drag again down to a pretty dark grey, and I'm going to set my opacity down to about 50%. So remember, what you can do with these is to choose all of your colors. So for number 3 here, I'm going to choose a slightly lighter grey, but again lowering the opacity, and gradually as they animate, these particles are going to change color and also fade out over time. So the last one I'm going to make completely black, and I'm going to set the opacity to quite a low value. Now the smoke should be looking something like what I have on my screen here, but it doesn't really look yet like a plume of smoke. Now the reason for that is as smoke rises into the air, it of course dissipates and thus becomes less thick. Now we've got it becoming less thick because we're having the color animations fade out, but what we want to do is have that smoke spread out, dissipate into the air. So what we really want to do is to make each particle grow as it animates. And we can do that by using the size grow value. Find the size grow value in Particle Animator and simply set it from 0 to a value of 1. And now, as you can see, the particles are looking a bit more like they are dissipating into the air. What we're also going to do is to use some random forces applied to our particles in order to make their animation look a little bit more lively. So I'm adding a value of 4 to the X and the Z axis in order to force the particles out towards the boundaries of the ellipsoid. Now if we hit play on the game, or Command and P on the keyboard, we can walk around our 3D world and take a glance over to where our volcano is billowing out with smoke. But it's not yet complete, and in the final part of this lesson we're going to prepare a material and apply a texture to this smoke to make it look a bit more realistic in our 3D world.